now. Okay, looks like successful recording. All right, well, welcome everyone to our virtual neighborhood meeting and to the Westover Hills Neighborhood 4th District School Board Forum. My name is Miles Keller. I'm the Secretary for the Neighborhood Association. Joining me tonight on video and audio are the two candidates, our current 4th District School Board member, Jonathan Young, and candidate for 4th District School Board, Deanna Fierro. Everyone else on this call is a webinar attendee, so kick back, let your hair down, grab a drink. You don't have to worry about muting yourself or being on video. And this webinar is now being recorded. It'll be posted on the neighborhood website, and we'll get all the links and everything out afterwards. So before we begin the school board forum, I have a few quick announcements for the Neighborhood Association. Obviously, it's been a tough time for in-person meetings and gatherings with the virus. And we're hoping this event can serve as a way for folks to still feel connected and involved. As of now, we still don't really have any plans for in-person neighborhood meetings, but we'll certainly keep everyone informed via email and social media about future virtual meetings, webinars, and hopefully someday down the road, seeing one another in person again. Safety and health are our top priorities, so we want to wish everyone the best and hope to see you out on your walks, runs, dog walks, and bike rides. We also want to let everyone know that the executive elections for the Neighborhood Association will still be in December. We'll likely do that all virtually. So if you'd like to take on some leadership in the neighborhood, we'd love to get you involved. And so there'll be more on that in upcoming emails and social media posts. Updates, we had a few updates from Kristen Larson. Kristen wanted to remind people that it's not only a presidential election year, but there are also elections for mayor, city council, and school board. Early voting is happening right now at the registrar's office at 2134 West Laburnum Avenue, and that goes until the end of October. And I'll throw in that tonight at midnight is the Virginia state deadline to register to vote. So make sure you check your voter registration before the end of the night. It was down earlier today and it is back up. So check your voter registration if you haven't already gone and voted or requested your ballot. Kristen's holding a virtual Richmond 300 meeting on Monday the 26th. That's 2 Mondays from now. Those details are forthcoming, so check out her Facebook, and we'll also send out the link to that Facebook event in the follow-up to this. And her last announcement is that work is continuing on the placemaking art installation for the Forest Hill corridor. That's the art installation that will go along Forest Hill Avenue. And that a survey is supposed to be put out in the next few weeks, so keep an eye out for that. They want to solicit your input. Okay, and that wraps up the announcements for the Neighborhood Association. So, so we can shift toward the forum. So welcome everyone to the Westover Hills Neighborhood Association 4th District School Board Candidate Forum. The candidates will start with opening statements in last name alphabetical order. After that, I'll pose questions gathered from the community, where we'll alternate back and forth on who answers first, giving our guests time to speak on each item only during their allotted time. And I will hold up a yellow card when a candidate has 30 seconds remaining, and a red card when they have about 10 seconds left to wrap up their thoughts. After community questions, each candidate will be given a few minutes for closing statements or to round back on any topic that they want to come back to from earlier. So candidates, make sure if you got a notepad or something, if you want to come back to something. And that will be in reverse last name alpha order. And to ensure we have an informative and respectful forum, both candidates have agreed to following these guidelines. So let's get started. So we'll begin with opening statements, giving the candidates time to introduce themselves and talk about what they bring to the table as your 4th District School Board representative. So Deanna, you're first. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the Westover Hills Neighborhood Association for hosting this. It was very important for me to reach out and try to find one of our associations that would be willing to host it. So thank you so much for taking this on to everyone. My name is Deanna Fierro, and I'm your 4th District School Board candidate for Richmond Public Schools. I am a licensed Virginia public school teacher, and I have been teaching here in the state of Virginia since 2011. My license is in mathematics, and I teach up to high school algebra. And out of the 10 years that I've been teaching, this is my 10th year, 7 of those I taught in the city of Richmond. So I've taught for Richmond Public Schools. I've taught out at MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School, and at Albert Hill Middle School. While I was at Albert Hill Middle School, I was a department chair, and in my first year as a department chair holder, I was able to move our team forward to get our school accredited in mathematics. I also held positions like being an after-school sponsor for National Junior Honor Society, which I made such a huge effort to make sure that it was representative of all of our students, the diverse demographics that we have. Also, while I was at Albert Hill Middle School, I was nominated Teacher of the Year while I was there. And I also had experience while working in Richmond Public Schools as a finance officer. So I have experience with that as well. I've supported our superintendent by being one of the teachers who first applied to his teacher advisory committee, and also being one of the being a member of his first Latino advisory committee, which is called La Comunidad. And last year, I was selected as one of the rezoning committee members. I have a master's in education, and with all of this experience and all of this this knowledge that I've learned from learning from others, from going to school, from being so involved in the community as a volunteer and as an advocate for public schools, both at the local level and at the state level, I've learned that it's important to have a strong school board. It's important to have a strong school board representative. And my platform is based on 3 pillars. The first one is to retain our best educators, and that's standing with our teacher union and making sure that we vote in favor of collective bargaining, giving them the options of mobility, and also streamlining processes that make their job easier. I also am running on a second pillar of attracting our families. I want to make sure that we are making schools that are inclusive of everybody, that we as a school board are making our schools attractive so that our families can see that the Richmond Public Schools is the best place for them to put their children. The last one is to build community. Here in the 4th District, I want to make sure that even if you don't have your children in our schools, or you don't have children at all, that you still have an opportunity to participate in our schools. So retaining educators, attracting families, and building communities. That's why I'm running for Richmond Public School.
Thank you. All right, Jonathan, same thing. Introduce yourself and tell our community what you bring to the table as the 4th District School Board rep. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Miles, and terrific to see you, sir. I terribly miss seeing you and everyone at the monthly meetings. I look forward to when we can resume them in person again. Miss them dearly. Deanna, good to see you. Always a pleasure. Miles, the stakes couldn't be higher. This year has taught us a lot. We have had a close and personal look at inequities in this town, arguably like never before. Between the pandemic, protest, and a focus on racial inequalities, and then all those persons who have lost their lives and their livelihoods, we have unfortunately had a front row seat as it relates to inequities in this town. And it's why, candidly, our job is so very important. Education is, in a few words or less, that great equalizer. It provides the opportunity for persons to secure success, however they would define it. But in Richmond Forever, we have, 4 years ago, shared that Rome is burning. We've been coming up short. Candidly, we know the statistics, but I think it's important to perhaps recite a few of them, including only half of our 3rd graders reading at grade level, losing 22% of our teachers on average year over year. 1 in 10 of our high school students, as identified by the College Board, ready for either college or career. I could go on, but I don't need to. The point is that for a long time we were broken. That's not to diminish the extraordinary work being done, but as a whole, we were cheating so many of our students out of the opportunity and potential that they so deserve. It's 4 years ago, I referenced why I ran for school board, and I can tell you our very first meeting, we were actually in Charlottesville out at the Virginia School Boards Association. And aside from one of my then colleagues, Nadine Marsh Carter, candidly, the balance of my then colleagues largely shared that the brokenness that I just referenced was exaggerated or embellished. Nadine and I recall looking around the room and and looking in bewilderment at that. And what's more, when I referenced 4 years ago in that very first meeting, our vision, my vision for our schools, specifically autonomy for our teachers, teacher autonomy, I was told that that was a bad word. Well, fast forward, and I couldn't be more excited about where we're at. I recognize that I'm limited as it relates to what I can share now, but I look forward to the next hour conveying where we're at now and why we're so excited about the direction we're going. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So we'll kick off the community questions section. John, you'll be up first. This one came up a few different times. What do you see as RPS's greatest challenge, current challenge, and what steps do you intend to take to address that? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer regards teacher retention. I referenced a moment ago, as did Deanna in her remarks, that we lose entirely way too many teachers. There are 400 teachers a year. To provide some context, we have about 2,000 persons that wear an instructor hat in Richmond Public Schools. And granted, in urban school districts across the country, we know that teacher retention constitutes a challenge. But candidly, when I started on the job, at the risk of being accused of being trite, I said, gosh, this is almost like McDonald's. The attrition is just through the roof, and it's just not sustainable. It's difficult to retain the kind of relationships that we need. And what's more, it's difficult to retain families. My perspective on Richmond Public Schools is we retain our teachers and we retain our families. In regards to the latter, we lose entirely too many. The numbers are staggering. For every 100 babies born in the city of Richmond, we only have about 74 students enrolled in Richmond Public Schools. If you juxtapose that number with, for example, Hanover County, Hanover, for every 100 babies born there, they have somewhere in the range of 135. So my perspective on it is, if we retain our teachers, we retain our family. One, we do that by increasing compensation. I'm really proud of the fact that my colleagues and I have increased compensation, so now Richmond Public School leads the region. What's more, we have moved the needle in regards to what I referenced a moment ago, teacher autonomy. For me, it's everything. It's getting the way out of folks, treating them like the adults, like the professionals that they are, and that means stopping any of the micromanagement that forever plagued Richmond Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Deanna, same question. RPS's greatest current challenge, and what steps do you intend to take to address it? 2 minutes.
Well, first, I'd like to say I'm surprised that Jonathan says that he works for teacher retention and supporting teacher autonomy when I've never once seen him at a Red for Ed event that educators in the state of Virginia put together in Richmond, going to the General Assembly, marching up there and asking for respect, to be treated as professionals as we are, to have teacher autonomy so that we are not overworked and not respected, and the quality of our life goes down as well. As far as the pay, I'd also say that I want to be clear that that is the starting pay. I know for a fact, being an educator who worked in Richmond and now in a local county, it's starting pay that Richmond has that is attractive to people. It is not the long-term pay that is the highest in the region. I'd also like to say that one of the things that I do to participate for teacher retention is to show up to events that Virginia Education Association has, which is retaining and recruiting teachers of color. Again, I've never seen one school board member of Richmond Public Schools doing that. So if we want to talk about what are our issues that we have here in Richmond, it depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about right now during the pandemic? Because that's equity and making sure that everyone is getting what they need during this virtual learning, and that we have communication to all of our families despite their backgrounds and despite the family context and their socioeconomic status. If we're talking about just in general, overall, we need uniform standard administrative policies and procedures to be followed at every single school to ensure that all of our students have equity and that parents know what they can expect from their administrators. So those are the kind of things. And if you're talking about what is our problem here in the 4th District, we have a school board member whose every single plan and motion that he's put forward has failed for lack of support. So that's a 0 pass rate. As a teacher, if you've got somebody that's a 0 pass rate, you need some help. That person is not effective right now. We need to help Jonathan out of the school board.
Thank you. All right. This question, so Deanna, you'll be going first on this question. It's one that's very important for our current public health situation. What strategies should RPS take into consideration when formulating its plan to address COVID-19 going into next spring, assuming that a vaccine has not been deployed on a massive scale? You have 2 minutes.
First of all, we need to be advocating, not now, but yesterday. We should have started advocating for more funding so that we actually have all of the PPE that we need, that we have the ventilation systems that we need, and that we have the kind of training that is going to be needed for our staff in order to follow safety procedures to keep all of our students and themselves safe and their families safe. We're going to have to make a clear plan available to the public that everybody understands what is the plan that we're all in collaboration with and that we're all in agreement with, that we're going to follow once we go back into in-person learning. If that means that Richmond Public Schools sets a policy that says you wear a mask at all times, we have to make sure that there is buy-in from the public, that we're going to have parents doing it, but that we're also going to have staff doing it. Not just sometimes, all the times. So those are the things that we need. And this goes back to what I was saying. We need clear administrative procedures that are made public, that anybody can pull up at any time and can say, hey, this is what we were expected to do. This is the quality of work. And this is the quality of safety that I'm expecting at all times. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the school board asking the fine details of day to day, hour by hour, of what is safety going to look like when we go back to in-person learning. And what's it going to look like to fill in the opportunity gaps that have just gotten bigger during virtual learning, and what is the educational plan going to look like to make sure that we close those opportunity gaps or work towards closing those opportunity gaps. Those are the fine details we're not getting and we're not hearing right now at the school board level. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, same thing. What strategies should RPS take into consideration when formulating its plan to address COVID-19 going into next spring, assuming that a vaccine has not been deployed on a massive scale? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, you have to say from the go, as I did this past semester, that any teacher should be able to teach virtual, no questions asked. That any family should be provided the opportunity to stay virtual, no questions asked. We recognize that candidly, and that's tragic, but we're probably going to be living with COVID for a while. So it's most important that we identify that any of our stakeholders, irrespective of who they are, if they're teacher, staff, or family, that they can stay virtual, and then provide them the resources to do that. That pertains to if and when we do resume in person. Second, we need to have a very robust conversation relevant to alternative scheduling. Specifically, I'm referring to, for example, going longer in the year, adopting, for example, a year-round school calendar, something that my colleagues and I have been deliberating on candidly for a while, for a few years. We had it in our Dreams for RPS strategic plan to pilot it, not terribly unlike what Chesterfield County did. But then at the 11th hour, it was removed. I thought that was unfortunate then, but now, because of the circumstances, there's a lot of interest and a lot of will to adopt a year-round calendar. You can do that a lot of different ways, but some of the models that we're most familiar with include just to the south of us, and thank you. Just to the south of us in North Carolina, for example, in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, or frankly, even a little closer, further south, specifically in Hopewell City, or right here, even in your backyard, Miles, at Patrick Henry. But the point is that we need to consider adopting an alternative schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, Jonathan, you'll go first on this. Westover Hills Elementary School was recently accredited for the first time in many years. What qualities do you see as having contributed to that success, and how can the lessons learned there be implemented at other schools in RPS? You have 2 minutes.
Well, the short answer is Allison Alcubi. We have an extraordinary leader in that building. I refer to all of our principals as CEOs, and I'm really intentional, try to be really intentional about the language that I use. And when I use that term, or that acronym CEO, I'm trying to convey my value, and my value is that the people in the buildings are responsible for running the buildings, not the folks downtown. As much as admire and respect and even love my colleagues on the school board, I recognize that it's the folks in the buildings on the front line who make things go around. Allison came in, and she is every bit of a CEO. She's an extraordinary leader. And even before she was on contract, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but even before she was on contract and officially started the job, she was mobilizing her team and going into, for example, Midlothian Village and doing book drives. So first and foremost, Allison, but second, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge what an extraordinary PTA that you've got there. I mean, you've got some really exceptional stakeholders, folks that are so very invested in Westover Hills and Westover Hills Elementary School. And then look, it's a long list. I mean, we saw scores like nowhere else in town. In fact, I will tell you that everyone in RPS is talking about Westover Hills Elementary and has been talking about Westover Hills Elementary, not just for the year-over-year increase in scores, but rather, for example, I mean, how Allison, for example, is partnering with the Kiwanis and providing recognition for students who do those little things that really aren't little but amount to something more. So it starts with leadership. Thank you, Miles.
Thanks. Deanna, the same. What qualities do you see as having contributed to that success at Westover Hills Elementary, and how can the lessons learned there be implemented at other schools in RPS? Yeah, 2 minutes.
So it was definitely a shift of culture in the climate, and I've seen it myself. I've passed by that school several times. I even drop my daughter off in the morning when we're in person learning so that she can catch her bus for her school there. But I've seen the transition, and it's a change that took a whole team. Yes, Principal Kubi, I say she is an amazing woman, and her job is a difficult one. But that's the job that as educators, we know we don't do it by ourselves. We do it by making sure that we're engaged with the community, that we're communicating with families and with other community stakeholders. So I have to say that there was a shift, but there was also a real interest from the community to make sure that they had the kind of school that they want to put their children in, and that will attract other families to want to put their children in. If we know here in the 4th District, there's always that conversation of people move here, young families move here, they start, and then they put their children into our schools, and after elementary, they pull them out. So it's a change in that. In the 4th District, people want to see that change. We have several families who want to see these newer families come here and stay here all the way from pre-K up to high school. So that's very important. It's a cultural and climate change that happened at Westover Hills Elementary School, and it's done with community collaboration. That's what has really made that happen. And I want to say too, on the issue of year-round school, we've heard that all the time. Going back to the other question, we've heard that every year proposed by our current school board member, but we've never seen a plan for that. And I don't think he really knows what like. So we don't want to hear that anymore if you don't bring a plan to the table. We're tired of that. I also want to say that other schools, just like Westover Hills and all of our other Richmond public schools, we cannot compare ourselves to the neighboring schools. And even the Council for Great City Schools said that they are not our counterparts. We need to look at school divisions like Newport News. So we need to get to the facts. We need to get to the real data here that really makes schools change as well. But overall, to the original question, it's investment in the neighborhood schools, wanting to see a change in your community.
Thank you. All right. Deanna, you'll be first on this. And this is a two-parter. There are 2 separate questions, and these will be it's like a lightning round. So there'll be 1 minute for each of these, but they're shorter. So, so this first one is both questions are about RPS's superintendent. So the first question is, do you support Superintendent Jason Camers's contract renewal, and how would you rate his performance thus far? So you have 1 minute.
So I want to see what the evaluation process is for the superintendent. This is something that we haven't seen what is public. We never get to see that. So what is the process? We definitely get to see the teacher evaluation process It is posted on VDOE, it is posted in the public. If you ask for it right now, somebody can drop you the link for that. But where is the evaluation process for administrators? Where is the evaluation process for superintendents? That's what I want to say. With Superintendent Cameras, when he came to Richmond Public Schools, I'm not going to pretend that I didn't know his history. Being an educator invested in learning about education, I definitely knew his history. But I'm also a warm demander, and I've been a warm demander since he's come. I have, as a community, we have a level of excellence that we want from our superintendent. And so I will keep pushing and working with him on advisory committees like I do now to make sure that we get that level of excellence.
Thank you. And John, same thing. Do you support Superintendent Jason Cameras' contract renewal? And how would you rate his performance thus far? You have 1 minute.
Oh, absolutely. I support Jason. I support him 100%. He and I often disagree, including as it relates to some high profile issues, but I love the guy. He is responsible for us really changing the culture in Richmond Public Schools in a big way, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for it. I don't have to agree with them all the time to recognize that, and I'm excited about where we're going in Richmond Public Schools. I've never been more excited about where we're headed. A former pastor of mine who incidentally lived in the neighborhood said once, "It's not where you're at, but the direction you're headed." As it relates to how I'd rate Jason, I'd give him a B, B plus, only because he and I have had some differences of opinion on certain issues, but no, he's extraordinary. I'm very excited about what he is doing, and candidly, a lot of our recent improvement can be attributed to Mr. Jason Cameras.
Thank you. All right, and the second part of the lightning round, and this is John, back to you again. Do you support the superintendent's Dreams for RPS strategic plan, and how do you intend to help him execute it successfully? You have 1 minute.
Yes, absolutely. We have to fully fund and implement Dreams for RPS. It was born out of the community. We had something, I think it was like 3,000 persons weigh in to provide input, their counsel, relevant to what is now 40 different initiatives. It's big, it's bold, it's transformative, frankly. It is expensive, so I've got to be straight with you on that. Altogether, it's $60 million a year when fully phased in. But yes, I fully support it. Voted for it then, and will continue to support it now.
Thank you. Deanna, same question. Do you support the superintendent's Dreams for RPS strategic plan, and how do you intend to help him execute it successfully? You have 1 minute.
Well, I'm surprised Jonathan Young says that again, because if he really supported the strategic plan, he wouldn't have voted against LGBTQ friendly policies for our students. He wouldn't have voted against and continues to vote against renaming our schools. That was part of the strategic plan, if you really read it. It was creating schools that are inclusive for all of our families. It also was rebuilding schools, making sure that our infrastructure was a optimal learning place for all of our students, not shutting down schools like Jonathan has recommended. 5 of our schools without even mentioning that to those communities. Yes, I have supported Jason Cameras' strategic plan, and I can tell you how. I've showed up to city council meetings. I've showed up to the offices of state legislators and senators to try to push for more funding to make that plan happen. As expensive as it is, if we really want it, we have to find the money to fund it.
Thank you. All right. This is a good one because you both mentioned it prior. Back to the 2-minute format. Deanna, you're first. What would you propose to help attract and retain teachers in RPS, and how would you support them in your role? You have 2 minutes.
Like I said before, we definitely have to stand with the teachers union, which is what the Virginia Education Association for the whole state of Virginia is asking for. The governor just passed this at the last General Assembly to give teachers the option to have collective bargaining and other union members. So we have to stand with the union. We have to support our educators and show them that we're there for them. We also have to give them a real line of mobility. We're not giving teachers mobility. A lot of people are overworked without even getting paid for that position, or without even getting offered another position that will pay them that. I know that firsthand because I was an educator who was also, like I said, the finance officer who was doing data for a whole school and was moving around computers upstairs and downstairs to make sure that every one of our students was able to test on the day of testing. So we need to make sure we give teachers the opportunity for leadership. We also have to streamline so many of the processes that we have. It should not be a headache and a whole adventure to try to get something to happen downtown. So we need to work on those internal issues as well.
Thank you. Jonathan, same question. What would you propose to help attract and retain teachers in RPS, and how would you support them in your role? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, it begins with culture. So we've had some conversation about our strategic plan. I'm confident we'll have some more. But I remind my colleagues, along with our staff all the time, that as important as strategy is, culture eats it for breakfast every day of the week. I think the saying is true. The truth is that forever to teach in Richmond Public Schools, not across the board, but often too frequently meant that you were told to stay in your lane. It was people were encouraged to not speak up or speak out. Folks were told to prioritize process, and we are shifting that in a way that I'm really excited. I referenced it a moment ago, but for teacher autonomy, you have to have what I characterize as real entrepreneurial school district. And what I mean by that is where you are allowing our teachers to go off script. You are allowing them to innovate. You're allowing them to go out there on the skinny ledge and do something that doesn't per se conform with what has been sent down from on high, i.e. from downtown, from the 17th floor of City Hall. It's a difference between, candidly, when I started, we had staff that if they said teach to fidelity one time, they must have said it 1,000 times. And I recognize that that's a bit in the weeds, but for any teachers listening in the call, you know what I'm referring to. Well, we've changed that, and now we refer to teach with integrity, not fidelity. And the point is that we are less concerned with teaching to a test, and instead prioritizing our teachers in a way that they have the capacity to have agency and decision-making process. That's how we recruit and retain our teachers, when we become that school district, when the word is out that you can go to Richmond and you can do what you went into the profession to achieve.
Thank you. All right, on to the next. John, again, for you, will you involve educators in decisions that impact RPS employees, including groups such as the Richmond Education Association? And do you support their desire to bring collective bargaining to RPS? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's first and foremost essential that you incorporate all of your stakeholders, and that begins with your teachers. Reference with about 2,000 instructors in the city of Richmond. And if you look at survey data, we survey a lot of our stakeholders, including our teachers. And some of the most recent VDOE survey data included, for example, that only 32% of teachers felt satisfied in their job. That tells you a lot, and it speaks to why we have the kind of attrition that we referenced a moment ago. The Richmond Education Association is an extraordinary group and do extraordinary work, and they're vital partners. They provide the kind of advocacy for our teachers that they so deserve. As it relates to collective bargaining, no. Collective bargaining is my experience has been, it sounds really terrific, but it provides for very often, not always, but very often a very adversarial relationship in school districts across the country, and sometimes that's resulted in kind of relationship building that you don't aspire for in a school district. I'd rather get to where we significantly increase our pay for teachers. I would like to by double digit, 10% on top of where we're at now. But pay is just one part of it. It really pertains to that capacity for our teachers to referenced a moment ago, to be entrepreneurial, be able to take risks, to go off script, to be provided with the opportunity to speak up and speak out, instead of being penalized for going out of your way to point out an opportunity to do something differently.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miles.
Sure. Deanna, back to you. Will you involve educators in decisions that impact RPS employees, including groups like the Richmond Education Association, and do you support their desire to bring collective bargaining to RPS? You have 2 minutes.
All around, yes. And I say that because I'm an educator who has taught in Richmond Public Schools, and I've seen it firsthand what happens when teachers don't have collective bargaining, when we don't do specifically interest-based collective bargaining. So it's fair for everybody. We sit down at the table with everybody. It doesn't matter from the highest paid to the lowest paid, and we make sure that we are all in agreement with that. That is what true collaborative governance is. So making sure that we have that strong collective bargaining contract, resolution is going to be very important. And somebody like Jonathan, who calls our principals CEOs, is somebody who is willing to sell our schools out to the highest bidder. And that's not what our schools are. Our schools are not businesses. They belong to the public, and they will always belong to the public, and they are not for sale. I'd also like to say that if we don't have collective bargaining, then we'll see school board members like Jonathan encouraging to, one, remove attendance officers without listening to teachers and families when they say we need them, and then turning around and saying that in order to make up for the attendance rates that are dropping is to make teachers do mandatory home visits to every child's home. One, that's not fair for the teachers who have their own families, who are also have other interests to grow themselves as an individual, but it's also not fair to the families who might not feel comfortable with having teachers there. So if we don't have collective bargaining, we're gonna have things like that happening all the time without teachers' say. So I stand with the Richmond Education Association.
Thank you. All right. Deanna, back to you. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing our growing Latino Hispanic population in Richmond? How have you been engaged with this community, and what is something you would propose to help this population achieve greater success in RPS? You have 2 minutes.
I've seen it firsthand being a Latinx teacher, sometimes the one Latinx teacher in my whole school building while I was working for Richmond Public Schools. I've seen firsthand what their experience is. I've volunteered in the South Side area, further out in the South Side where our biggest Latinx community is, and I've heard the stories firsthand from the families that reach out looking for help. Even today, I've had a family that reached out to me on Facebook that said, we know you're an educator, can you please help us out? So what I would propose is to increase our communication with them, to really go through with a fine-tooth comb what is happening with the funding that comes from for English language learners. How are we using that? And what are the metrics that we are using to help our students out, to make sure that those ideas that we're putting forward, those initiatives are actually giving us a return on investment. So making sure that we do that. I'm not afraid to call out when there is an injustice or an inequity, and I've proven that when I myself put in a OCR request, that's a complaint to the Department of Education for the state, saying that we need to look into why are we undercounting our students? How else are we underserving our students? Just not to get anyone in trouble, like I said before, but to have another set of eyes look at what we're doing to serve our students. So making sure that we give all of our students opportunity and being realistic that not all of our newcomer students are going to get a high school degree. So that means we need to start looking into vocational training, technical training, other job opportunities, skill training, to make sure that they leave our schools with something to have a sustainable life when they leave our Richmond Public Schools.
Thank you. And Jonathan, same thing. What do you see as the biggest challenges for our Latino and Hispanic population in Richmond? And how have you been engaged with this community and something you'd propose to help this population achieve greater success? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, terrific question. I often characterize some of our Latino population, Richmond Public Schools, which comprise about one in 5 as some of our students, some of our most vulnerable. If you look at the data, it bears it out. So for example, we only graduate in Richmond Public Schools about 40%, a little over 40% of our Latino students. We're failing them miserably, and candidly, it's a civil rights issue in Richmond that too few people are talking about it. So I'm glad we have an opportunity this evening. So first and foremost, yes, we've got to identify who is an L student, English language learner. It turned out prior to this board and this administration, we were undercounting our students that were eligible, for example, ESL services by hundreds. We weren't doing basic things like leveraging and again, at the risk of getting in the weeds, I don't mean to, but we weren't, for example, comporting with WIDA and assessing students' language proficiency. And because of it, we had a lot of our ESL instructors across the district who were saying to downtown, essentially, hey, you're undercounting. And it was costing, first and foremost, our students opportunities, but it also meant that teachers were stretched thin. And then what's more, it was costing the city, costing Richmond Public Schools significant resources, something like I think $600,000 a year from the Commonwealth. Now we've rectified that, but we have a long way to go. It's a newcomer academy. Yes, it's career and technical education. I'm extraordinarily excited. I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk about what we're doing with J. Sergeant Reynolds. But for many of our Latino students, they are our most vulnerable, and we have to do much more. Thank you, Miles.
Thank you. All right, Jonathan, back to you again. Do you support increasing funding for RPS? And I think more specifically, the important part of this question is, where do you believe the city should raise those funds? 2 minutes.
Yeah, so we had a little conversation about a couple of different topics. One, the Dreams for RPS, I referenced a moment ago, when fully phased in at $60 million a year. Some of that we've already built in. So this year, for example, right now, altogether for operations, when you include our general fund budget, and then also those dollars that we'll spend from Title I and Head Start, point is federal money, is about $415 million a year. Yes, we do. We need to increase the budget to accommodate, one, Dreams for RPS, but two, we also had a conversation a moment ago about a school year and what an alternative school year could look like, and there's a lot of evidence that points to, even in normal times, that teachers often spend something like 3 weeks in September just playing catch up from the preceding year. So I'm excited for an opportunity to consider a year-round school year, and yours truly will be introducing the plan there too. But what's more, because of COVID, we have lost so very much time. And so to do this, the only way to do it is to significantly increase the budget. From my perspective, the only way to do it is to significantly increase the budget to provide for additional compensation for teachers. I would like to increase the budget there too by 10%. If we did that, you're talking about another $20 million increase as for Richmond Public Schools, specifically for compensation. As it relates to how to pay for it, first and foremost, we are fortunate in that city coffers, even now in the pandemic, are growing. Kristen Larson's ordinance that provides for 55% of real estate tax dollars, I would like to see increased to more than 55%. Thank you.
Thank you. Deanna, same question. Do you support increasing funding for RPS, and where should the city raise those funds? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, I do support increasing funding for RPS, and you can see that in my work that I've done over the last 3 years, advocating with organizations like Virginia Educators United, who is a grassroots coalition, also with Fund Our Schools, who's also another coalition that is working across the state of Virginia, not only for getting more funding for our schools like Richmond, but for all public schools throughout the state of Virginia. So I've been doing that nonstop, advocating with other fellow educators and community stakeholders and parents. I'm surprised, again, I'm so surprised at the things that Jonathan says, because to our neighbors and in his mailers, he brags about budget cuts, year-over-year budget cuts, and closing schools. So that's one of his biggest boasts, is that we cut $13 million. But that means that every year, if we're talking about budget cuts, is because we have a bad budget. We need to really go through, we need to do zero-based budget, to strip down the budget to just the necessities and make sure that every item that we're buying, every initiative that we're buying into, every resource has been vetted, research-based, and proven, and has the data to prove it, that it is actually going to give us a return on investment. And through that process, we need to make sure that we're engaging the community and engaging educators who know firsthand what it's like teaching, not because somebody comes in and says that they heard someone say that this is how public school teaching is. I'm sorry, Jonathan, but if you think that teachers every year are catching up what they lost the year before, I don't know how many teachers you've actually taught to, because myself personally, no, I don't need to do that. Okay, and all of our educators in Richmond Public Schools, if we're really working hard with our students, we're not trying to play catch up. But I do say if we really want to look into year-round school, then we should allocate money to making a strong plan for that. We just need to go through our budget, and we need to clean some house on that and tighten it up, tighten up the process, definitely.
Thank you. All right. Deanna, back to you again. How do you feel about the way student discipline has been handled by RPS? And would you support a change such as removing law enforcement officers from schools? You have 2 minutes.
So I've seen firsthand, having worked in Richmond Public Schools, how discipline is done. It's not uniform. Like I said before, we need those administrative procedures and policies to be uniform. We need to go through and vet what is over punitive. We have a very punitive system, and we need to give our educators throughout the Richmond Public Schools training so that their methods, their approaches are not punitive. It's not everybody, but it's a couple, and unfortunately, it's a couple of people who have a lot of strength and position. One thing that I would do is I would not do what my opponent says, and what again he's put in his mailer is side 100% with principals on disciplinary issues. When you say something like that, you basically say that our children have a zero fighting chance to show us, to demonstrate to us, and to communicate with us what is going on at home, what is going on with them individually that is causing them to act out. On the issue of SRO officers, yes, I've supported it, but I supported it after doing the research, and I've clearly stated that I will continue to support something like that if once on the school board, I can see a detailed plan for how that will work. If you know, I did a town hall where I had Richmond City Police Department's police officers come, and they also said the same thing. How and where is the money going to come from in order to make sure that we have more mental health services, that we have all the wraparound services that we need, that we have more counselors and social workers. But it's also going to take getting the city council involved. They need to participate in this conversation. This shouldn't just be the school board, because we want to talk about fixing our communities. A lot of time, a lot of those issues come into our communities. So I want to see a plan. I want to see a clear, detailed plan of how and when are we going to remove SROs, if that is the vote of the board, and if that is what the community definitely wants. The research is there. I had a change of heart, and so I know it is there for a fact. I've done the research. You can watch the rest of my opinion online as well.
Thank you. Jonathan, same question. How do you feel about the way student discipline is handled by RPS, and would you support a change such as removing law enforcement officers from schools? You have 2 minutes.
No, I don't support removing SROs, and I'll tell you why. Because our students don't support that. By 2 to 1, they don't support that, and our teachers, approximately 80% of our teachers, our faculty and staff do not support removing SROs. The truth is that our SROs, we have 14, I think, is the current count, and I can tell you that they're more than an SRO. They are coaches, they're mentors, they're providing all kind of support in our buildings, and some of them have, in fact, a background in education. Some of them even work now at different organizations right here in town when they're not on duty. I'm referring to that are providing support to our same students. So I think that would be a terrible mistake, because candidly, for one, it seems to me that Richmond Public Schools has an opportunity and a responsibility to relationship build, and relationship building includes with the women and men of law enforcement, to provide for sometimes for some of our students one of those few opportunities that they have to develop a relationship that's unlike what we typically think of law enforcement's responsibilities. As relates to discipline as a whole, yeah, I can share with you that if you look at, for example, some of the survey data, you will see that, for example, our teachers will share that when asked, do you think that Richmond Public Schools suspensions are contributing to the culture in the building or helping address the issue? Teachers overwhelmingly will say no. So that's an opportunity for improvement. Thank you, Miles.
Thank you. Okay, getting towards the bottom of the question list. All right. So Jonathan, this is back to you. And this question was specifically directed to you, but as per our format, we'll allow both candidates to respond. The question was, Why did you vote against policies supporting LGBTQ students in RPS? And Deanna, would you vote similarly? So John, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. So there was a reference made earlier to the Dreams for RPS or strategic plan, and I do support that, and do support all of our students, irrespective of who they are, where they're from, what they look like, who they're attracted to. The reality is that we are, at the risk of sounding like we're in church, we're all God's creatures, and I believe that we should all treat each other with love accordingly. Pertaining to that specific vote, so I, on more than one occasion, multiple times, attempted to amend it to specifically pertain to sports, athletic competitions, and I was advised by staff on more than one occasion that federal law, look to federal law. It's the federal statutes are adequate, Jonathan, to address what you're concerned about. And I pointed out that if that was the case, we wouldn't have some of the circumstances we do in other states. But it pertains to equity and gender equity, and specifically males joining female sports teams, not transgender students, not transgender students, but rather boys joining girls sports teams. I didn't think that was common sense. I didn't think that was fair, and unfortunately, often, as it is with policy adoption, you come up short in regards to amending it. You have to make a decision in regards to if you're going to vote for the package as a whole or not.
Thank you. And Deanna, you're able to respond, and would you vote similarly? You have 2 minutes.
Would I vote like Jonathan Young? No, I would have voted in favor. And I'm glad that he said what he just said, because that was a lie. I'm sorry, but that day of that meeting and the discussion meetings that happened before that, allowing girls to play sports was never on the agenda. That's what he's told several of our neighbors. And if you look it up on Richmond board docs, Richmond Public Schools board docs, you can see the meeting, you can see the presentation yourself. That was not part of it. If he really truly knew public schools in the state of Virginia, he would know that that's not even something that a school board votes on. That's something that VHSL votes on. That's the varsity high school sports leagues. They take care of that. That is not a public school board decision. So for him to tell you that that's why he voted against the policy, that's a straight lie. I'm sorry, but that is a lie. And I would vote in favor of continuing to look at all of our policies and our student code of conduct to continue making them gender inclusive, gender neutral, and inclusive of all of our students. As you can see, one of my endorsements just came out by a nationally recognized trans activist and educator, Gavin Grimm, who fought for the same thing that we're fighting for here in Richmond Public Schools. And that was to identify him and accept him in the gender that he is and wants to be. So no, I would not vote like Jonathan Young.
Thank you. All right, Deanna, back to you. What proposals do you support or intend to put forward to combat equity gaps in RPS? You have 2 minutes.
It depends on how we break it down. If we're going to talk about our budget, like I said, we're going to have to go through and do zero-based budgeting to see how we're spending and where are we spending to make sure that it's equitable. As far as proposals to fix something like that and to make sure that all the initiatives are happening in all of our schools, advanced programming for all of our students is an opportunity for everyone. I would continue to push for that, expanding the equity fund, which is something that Superintendent Jason Karamis put forward. And I would also ask for the state of Virginia to bring that back. When the virus hit in March, that was something that they were talking about pulling from the table. So we want to make sure that the state of Virginia continues to push forward with their idea of an equity fund for all of our schools in the state of Virginia. I'd also make sure that we are going through our open enrollment process, as we all know that has been a critical issue. No more talking about how when we're going to do it or if we need to do it. We know we need to do it. We've seen the data several times, year over year, school board over school board. We just need to get down to it. It needs to be one of the first things that we address if we're going to go back to in-person learning before the next school year, so that all of our students, no matter what, have an opportunity for transportation to go to advanced programs, and all of them starting as early as elementary are put on tracks for advanced learning. That's what we need to do. Those are the kind of initiatives that I would push forward for Richmond Public Schools.
Thank you. Jonathan, same thing. What proposals do you support or intend to put forward to combat equity gaps in RPS? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I alluded to it, though I was limited in our opening remarks just because of time. But the truth is that we have arguably like never before, at least in a long time, see inequities really born out of certain circumstances, including the pandemic. And it's going to be more important than ever that we throw everything that we've got at this one issue. And what it means is that we are investing more in including those schools that need it most. Yeah, when we arrived, everything was broken. Literally, we had students that, because of, for no other reason than the school that they were enrolled in, were not being afforded the same opportunity to participate in credit-bearing classes, or to be provided access to what you would characterize perhaps as simple things like uniforms for band or for football. And what that does, at the risk of stating the obvious, is it tells some of our students that they are less deserving or less worthy than others. It's been a focus of this board. And Miles, you inquired a moment ago about our superintendent, Jason Camrus. I can share with you that this is his focus. It's like a laser beam. When we interviewed him when we interviewed him 3 hours, including over lunch, he kept making this point over and over again that if we achieve nothing else in Richmond Public Schools, we had to address this issue. So look forward to continuing to work together with the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're on our last community question, and then we'll move on to closing statements. Jonathan, this is back to you. Do you support efforts to rename some schools in the city of Richmond? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, look, I'm very glad that we are more than ever an inclusive school district. We should be, for all the obvious reasons, and I'm glad that we are celebrating persons who rightfully deserve it. I think of, for example, my friend Nadine's father, Henry Marsh. I do think it's important and incumbent on us to identify how we continue to tell history, all good, bad, and the ugly. I think it's a mistake to, for example, dispatch founding fathers, persons like George Mason. My colleagues, or at least some of my colleagues, are interested next year in renaming Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, George Wythe. We don't have a school for George Washington, but if we did, by the same rationale, we would have to dismiss our first president. I think it's most important that we do become that inclusive community that we have never been, and we still strive to achieve. But that we do it in a way that we recognize that it's important to tell all of our history, and not to dismiss even those truly bad parts of our history.
Thank you. Deanna, same thing. Do you support the efforts to rename some schools in the city of Richmond? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, and if elected, I would vote yes. I would vote to rename the schools, the 2 schools that we have left to rename. And I can tell you, I've heard a very different, more detailed explanation from my opponent, and I can share that online later today so people can hear what he said, that renaming our schools would be, repealing the names would be like repealing civil rights. How a name would do that, I have no idea where he gets that rationale from. But I'm not proposing to rename them after people. Yes, I appreciate that the community that named the school, George Mason named it Henry Marsh, that was their choice, that was their community voice. But one of the things that I'd like to propose, because I want to make sure that all of our names are going to be inclusive 40 years from now, 100 years from now, is to name them after to stop naming them after people. Stop making our schools places where people play out their politics like that. Let's make sure that they're non-inclusive names like River City Middle School and Cardinal Elementary, because in 100 years from now, that will still be the school name. And I'm not an African-American from Richmond, and I'm not a white American here in Richmond. I'm not. I'm a third-generation Mexican-American from El Paso, Texas, and my daughter is a Afro-Latina. She's a biracial child. So making sure that names are inclusive for her and for all of our families, despite their race and their background, is very important. So yes, I support renaming our schools and making sure that they're inclusive of everybody by not naming them after people. That's what I would push for.
Thank you. All right, so that closes out the community questions. Thanks for sticking with me here. I think we're doing well on time, so closing statements, we'll do 4 minutes. Use all or use whatever you want of that. And so we'll go in reverse last name order, the opposite of what we did up top. So Jonathan, you have 4 minutes to close out.
Well, Miles, thank you again for the opportunity, and really appreciate you and Westover Hills Neighborhood Association, as you always do, stepping up to the plate. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation this evening. Would have, in a perfect world, would have preferred to do it in person, but we don't live in a perfect world, and unfortunately, too many of our neighbors are their lives and their livelihoods because of COVID. Deanna, always pleasure. Appreciate the spirited exchange, and I can tell you it's the highest honor to have had the privilege the last 4 years to represent the 4th District on the school board for the city of Richmond. I'm always so impressed with our neighbors who are also very engaged, relevant to schools, and folks volunteer terrific advice and recommendations, and I always like to remind folks that they are my boss, and take that to heart, because it's true. And our stakeholders in our schools, irrespective if they reside in the city or not, are the folks that we first and foremost have to lean on. And so, in every decision, I try to approach it from the perspective of what are our people in the front lines, what are our teachers, what are our students, what's their advice? What are their recommendations? And I'm excited for where we're going. In my opening remarks, I didn't really have an opportunity to share some of where I think we're going. But for example, career and technical education. We have a partnership with J. Sargent Reynolds, specifically Early College Academy. It's still arguably in its infancy. It's still small. But I'm so very excited about the opportunity to open up a new facility on Route 1 just south of downtown to co-locate with an institution of higher learning for the purpose of providing students access to career and technical education to do something comparable to, for example, what Chesterfield does in their 2 facilities, one at Elsie Bird and the second at the old Clover Hill site. I am really excited about whenever it is that COVID subsides, about teacher home visits. Relationships are everything, and so for the opportunity for us to for some of our families demystify what school, what academia looks like, and to relationship build or bridge is an opportunity there too. I am excited about the Newcomer Academy, and meeting folks where they're at. Meeting folks where they're at means that we first identify what's important to them, what's most important to them, and then after we've developed a relationship, reciprocate and invite our students or our families, fill in the blank, to consider them meeting us where we're at. So the point is that we're because of the pandemic, because of COVID, we're in an unfortunate circumstance where so many of the initiatives that we launched had to be put on pause. I referenced but a couple of them, but I am most excited for it, to be blunt. We're doing some of the things that we should have done a long time ago. We're a one-to-one school district now. Every student has their own device. Henrico did that, my goodness, probably I want to say 2 decades ago. Yeah, there's an old saying, better late than never, but we have miles to go. Miles, no pun intended. Thank you, sir, and big thanks to Westover Hills Neighborhood Association for the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Deanna, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you so much. I just want to start off that what we want in the 4th District is we want amazing schools for our children. We want schools that are reflective of what is important to us as a community. And that's exactly what I believe schools are. They're the pillar of the community. And so making sure that they reflect what is our highest value, which is our children, whether they're ours or our neighbor's child, that's what we should be doing. We should be investing in our children. And so until we start seeing that, that's what I'm going to work towards, to make sure that we have schools that are reflective of us investing in our children. If we don't start investing in our children, then we're not investing in our city and we're not investing in our state. That's what we really need to do. We need to be thinking about plans for development all the time with our most vulnerable people, with our those that have the highest needs. And so children are one of those individuals. And this is my life's work. I'm a public school teacher. That's what I've done since I moved here to Virginia in 2011. That's what I'm going to continue doing. I'm going to continue working in schools. I'm not looking for opportunity. I'm not looking to try to show up and take selfies and pretend like I'm engaged. No, I am engaged, and I've been engaged for several years in the community. I make sure that I listen. I offer help wherever it is needed. And one of the things that I've done over the last 3 years is also share information about Richmond Public Schools and opportunities for supporting all of our children and all of our families. I've had people tell me, I thought you were my school board member because of how much information you put out. I've gone to the voting polls before and somebody says, oh, you're the education lady. Well, I'm proud of that. That makes me very happy. So I am a parent and I am an educator who has lived here in the 4th District since Jonathan has been on the board. And 0 times have I ever had a newsletter from him. Have I ever had any communication from him? Have I ever been asked about my opinion, or have my neighbors been asked about our opinion about what we want in our schools? Just like when I was on the rezoning committee, myself and the other committee member, we had no idea that he came up with plans. Why? Because he doesn't feel like he needs to be held accountable. And that's something that I promise to do, is to be held accountable. If you go to my website right now, and I made sure I made that website with a platform on there that I got collaboration from educators, parents, and current Richmond Public School teachers to participate, and other advocates for education and racial justice and social justice to participate in. I made sure that that platform is there. And if elected, it's going to stay there so that people can hold me accountable. And so that I'm not going to go knocking on doors and telling one neighbor one thing so that they'll vote for me, and another neighbor another thing so they'll vote for me. That's what I'm offering. Honesty, accountability, experience as a public school teacher. That's what I am. This is my life's work. Richmond Public Schools has embraced me. It has accepted me. The city of Richmond, the people of Richmond, and the people of the 4th District have been very accepting to me and my family. And I want to make sure that I return that I give back that in gratitude by serving as a school board member and making sure that all of our children throughout the state of, throughout Richmond Public Schools are being heard and represented. That's very important for me. And I go above and beyond all the time. I really do. This is important. This is very important. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And I just want to remind people, my 3 pillars are to retain our educators, attract our families, and build community. That's what I really want to do. And I can't do it by myself. I'm not trying to fund my own campaign by myself like my opponent. I'm doing this by earning your dollar. Because like I said, I know that if elected, I'm going to be true to being held accountable. If I don't earn your dollar and I don't earn your vote, if I don't truly do it, then I won't feel accountable. And that's what we've seen. We've seen a school board member who's not engaged with us, who's not representing us, and who's not listening to us. So thank you, 4th District. Thank you to everybody for allowing me. And thank you to the Westover Hills Neighborhood Association for setting up this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to both of you for being here, Deanna and Jonathan. Appreciate you taking the time to answer our community's questions. Thank you to everybody out there in the audience who showed up, who tuned in. We wish you both the best on November 3rd and encourage everyone to get out and vote. Remember, the deadline to register is midnight. So when you get off of here, if you are not sure, get on the website. So thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.